The smoke rose thin as a thread at first, barely there in the cool of a May morning. It seeped up from a seam behind the Odd Fellows Cemetery at the edge of town, wisps that smelled like hot metal and damp ash. Men in canvas coats swung shovels, tamped the ground, and raked at trash that had been set alight for the Memorial Day cleanup. A dump fire in a coal town did not scare anyone. Hoses hissed. Steam rolled. Someone said it was out. The wind shifted, and the smoke kept coming. Centralia, Pennsylvania, sat on anthracite that had fed stoves for generations. Old bootleg tunnels ran under porches and alleys, worked hard in the 30s, and then left to silence. On that weekend in 1962, flames found a path from the surface pit into those abandoned spaces. The heat moved along timbers and airways carved decades earlier. What had been a controlled burn became a coal fire underground, a slow engine that would not stop. At first, the signs felt ordinary. A sulfur smell near the dump, warm spots in the grass, a faint haze where there should have been morning frost. Borough crews called the state, and state men drilled a few test holes and watched their gauges flicker. Plans were drawn to dig a trench and seal the fire from air. The contracts took time. By the time the first trench cut into the hill that fall, the fire had already stepped past it in the dark, riding old headings toward town basements. Years slid by in that half-seen way coal burns. Centralia went on with church dinners and school games, while smoke curled from culverts after rain. One basement smelled wrong. A cellar wall felt hot. There was talk around coffee counters of headaches that came on fast and quit only after you walked outside. Miners knew that feeling. Carbon monoxide has no color and no mercy. Meters began to show numbers that did not belong in a kitchen. There were efforts, and they weren't small. Crews poured fly ash and slurry into boreholes to smother the fire. Backhoes clawed trenches that filled with steam and collapsed as soon as they were dug. A winter storm shut one project down. Money and patience shut down others. The fire kept choosing the path of least resistance, and the town rarely knew which crawl space or culvert would breathe next. Then came the moments that changed how people talked about it. In 1979, the owner of a gas station stuck a thermometer into his underground tanks because the pumps felt hot to the touch. The needle climbed past 100, past 160, and settled near 172. That kind of heat, a few feet below the blacktop, said the fire was closer than the maps suggested. 2 winters later, February 14th, 1981, 12-year-old Todd Domboski crossed his grandmother's yard and the ground gave way. A sinkhole opened beneath him, 10 feet across and as deep as a house foundation. Hot steam and carbon monoxide poured up. He clung to roots and screamed until a cousin hauled him out with a branch. The hole hissed in the snow like a kettle. After that, arguments about danger ended in a hurry. Officials tested houses street by street, carrying meters that chirped and flashed. Red tags went on doors. People propped windows even in February to vent their kitchens. Some families slept with alarms near their pillows. Others said the danger was overstated, that the fire would move on the way old mine fires always had. They argued in Borough Hall, at the post office, on porches with their coats zipped up to the neck. It is hard to leave a place that holds your parents' names in the cemetery stones and your own name in the yearbook stacked in the attic. Washington took notice. In 1983 to 84, Congress funded a relocation program, tens of millions of dollars to buy out homes in the impact zone. Inspectors walked through living rooms that had framed wedding photos on the mantel and wrote numbers on clipboards. Families accepted checks and watched crews push walls into foundations. Blocks turned to grass and then to scrub. The people who remained grew fewer every year, stubborn or hopeful or both. The fire did not vote. It moved under whichever house happened to be above the seam that month. By 1992, the Commonwealth condemned the remaining properties and moved to take the town by eminent domain. Centralia's zip code disappeared in 2002. Street signs stood over empty lots. The state rerouted Route 61 after the pavement buckled, and steam cut sight lines on a warm day like fog. The old highway, closed and quiet, turned into a patchwork of spray paint when teenagers and road trippers came to see where the ground smoked. Years later, the owner trucked in dirt and buried that strip to keep people off the crumbling bed. In 2013, after long lawsuits, the last holdouts won the right to remain for life. When they pass, the land reverts to the state. One by one, porches went dark, but a few windows still glow on winter evenings. Ask how long it will burn, and you get a shrug and a number so large it feels like a dare. Another 100 years, maybe 2. Anthracite is dense. Once lit, it feeds on the coal and the air that finds its way through old voids. Engineers mapped the edges again and again, watching cracks widen and gases spike after storms. They can tell you where the ground is warm and where a fissure pulls in a leaf like a breath, but they cannot tell you exactly where fire will go next. Underground, a coal seam is a city of galleries and pillars and dead ends, a drafty maze that offers more choices than any plan can close. For the people who left, the loss is ordinary and permanent. It lives in small sentences. We used to live 2 houses down from St. Ignatius. The grocery was where the Birches are. My father's shift started at 6. For the few who stayed, the town shrank to a handful of houses and habit. Mail came through another ZIP. Snowplows learned which streets still mattered. The cemetery stayed busy with visitors who were there for older reasons. On some mornings, the steam at the edge of the graves looks like breath. Centralia became a symbol of something larger than itself, how a fix that feels routine can slip, how old systems amplify mistakes. The dump fire was not meant to travel. The trench was not meant to fail. Budgets were not meant to stall. Yet each step left the next one harder, and in that gap, the coal kept burning. You can chart the curve in documents, meeting minutes, bid notices, test results, emergency declarations. You can also read it in family albums boxed in basements that do not exist anymore. Drive there today, and you'll pass new guardrails and a bypass where the state road used to run. Slow down where the map still insists on a grid. Between the birches and sumac are concrete front steps that climb to nothing. In summer, crickets fill the lots where houses stood shoulder to shoulder. On cold days, you might see a wavering above a patch of ground, and you can hold your hand there and feel a ghost of heat. It is quiet, and then a vent somewhere exhales and the air smells like pennies. Disaster stories often have a single hour that breaks the world open. Centralia didn't. It had a weekend of cleanup, a trench that missed, a call about a hot pump handle, a hole that swallowed a boy and spit him back out alive. Each moment was small enough to ignore. Put together, they emptied a town. The fire keeps its own calendar now, burning through pillars of coal laid down when this valley was a swamp, and will be ash long after everyone who remembers the old street names is gone. Thank you for listening to Road to Ruins. Subscribe for more true stories where systems fail and people pay the price.